So it's interesting when people blame someone or accuse someone of something. Most likely they are practicing it, have done it, been doing it, hold it within themselves. And so what's interesting is the activist world out there blaming certain therapies for why certain resurgences of old pandemics have come up. And so you have to understand why yesterday and the last couple of days, excuse me, I've been focusing on the defense versus attack. Actually, they're equal. Defending and attacking are actually equal, because defending something can also come off as an attack, and attacking something can also come off as a defense. It's just relative to the perspective and how you are, what your intention is. And so the activist world and the medicinal world, the drug world, the psychedelics world, the holistic remedies world, all of those, the cannabis world, whatever, the therapies world, they all have created rocket propelled grenades that are housed with different viruses from people's defense systems that are going to be viewed as an attack on someone's body. Because regardless of your intention of what you're taking in, whether it's psychedelic, cannabis, or a therapy, or a pill, powder, supplement, detox, whatever, it's your own personal whatever. But your defense system builds up microbes against it, and then your defense system puts it out there. And so your defense, which is your body releasing the mucus and the coughing and all that stuff and the loogies and whatever, is now viewed as an attack on someone else, because someone else has to take that information and upgrade to it, and also potentially build their own defenses. If their defenses are low, then that specific microbe will merge in with yours, and who knows how that's going to manifest as far as commandeering someone's immune system and sending off crazy messages. And so if you have a very high defense system, but you still have the programming, you still hold the programming. And so if you have a high defensive system relative to what's going on, and your body has released it. So you can have a strong defense system and a strong body, and someone like me who's now figured out her first lines of defense, I can be exposed to someone lobbing those grenades at me, and I have a strong defense system and a strong body. I won't succumb to those little viral microbes now or later. It'll just be like a coughing, sneezing, and get it out there and into my napkin and into the garbage. But I know for a fact there are people in my Jilly Juice world who are still blaming the V's for the HIV pandemic. And I know they're cured. I actually know they're cured. How do I know they're cured? Because they're still blaming. When you accuse an industry or a person, place, or thing for a very specific thing, you actually hold that within inside of you. You're like, oh, well, the reason why I might have it is because of this. No, you've been exposed to AIDS ever since 1981. We've all been exposed to AIDS ever since the 1980s, because that's when everything came to surface. And then people were dying, like San Francisco, and it came all over the world, Africa, Asia. AIDS is not like, it's still out there. Why there's specific energies around it, because some people will succumb to the infection because of various reasons. But everybody holds the virus within. Everybody holds the algorithms within. When it turns into the actual AIDS virus is when the replication of the body trying to fight against it, but then it doesn't have a strong enough defense, and so that virus then becomes the monster and then is doing what it's programmed to do, which is eat your T cells. It might be eating a little bit of T cells here and there, and then you have little infections, flare-ups here and there, and you don't really make that connection that maybe it's from the AIDS virus or from HIV because you haven't tested for it. But then things happen, and people then get these weird exotic diseases that may emulate certain aspects of AIDS or certain aspects of different diseases. That's why everything seems very similar, because they're all playing off each other. But then when you have a high algorithm, such as the COVID-19, where it came from, you'll never know. It probably came from a very aggressive antibiotic that somebody then took that information on because it's novel. And you could say that maybe the plant and the animal antibiotics or plants being used as antibiotics for medicine, or even elements used as antibiotics for medicine on animals, then mutated these viruses. The bats and the chickens and the horses and the cows are spitting out their own defense system. Then it's merging with the humans. And so then you have, bird flu, avian flu, and all that. But the thing is, people are holding all of these things inside of them. And people are proud of doing cannabis. They're proud of doing the psychedelics. They go to the retreats and do all the ayahuasca and the LSD and all that stuff. And they're on therapies. They're around people who have done oncological therapies. They are hanging out with their friends and family, going into large crowds, doing whatever, picking up people's microbes. And they haven't fully reconciled everything inside. They still hold that programming. Not only do they hold the AIDS programming in them, but they hold everything else they've ever been exposed to. But people are under specific cures. They're under specific detoxes or immune suppression type of stuff. And so even though they haven't tested for it and it hasn't come up positive or whatever, doesn't mean that they're not contributing to the pandemic. And so this is what I figured out just from the last couple of days when someone was accusing me of smoking pot. Then I did my own little research and figured out, oh, this person is a pot smoker. Holy shit. No wonder he was accusing me of smoking pot, because he knows how much mucus develops when you're smoking pot, because you hear the pot smokers are coughing up a storm when they're taking their pot. And they say, oh yeah, when you cough, it makes the high better or something. I'm just like, oh my God. But that's how they get their high, is by the amount of coughing, by triggering their immune system to develop so many B cells and T cells against it, and that's where the high comes from. And so they're lost in a fog. That's, when you're dealing with bringing up all of your predispositions by not suppressing it with drugs or anything else, people feel like they're in a foggy state. Do they actually feel high? I couldn't tell you that. Maybe they might have residual programming inside that may have to come and revisit them. So then you realize the people who are accusing you of things or blaming a therapy, instead of understanding that it's the whole drug industry as a whole. It's all the illicit and the recreational drugs, all the retreats you ever been to, all the shamans playing with the essential oils, with all the different supplements and detoxes and extracts and the energy crystal stuff. They also have contributed to this pandemic. Will they take responsibility? No, because remember, if you're cured, you're not going to evolve. That's how I know a lot of my Jilly Juice crowd is not evolving, because they're still circulating within the same programming that they came into the Jilly Juice world with. The person I'm referring to hasn't changed their profile, or it hasn't changed what they post on their Facebook. It's all the same love, 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 and numbers, and let's go after the V industry and just target that, but not take into account what they have done in their world as far as cannabis, psychedelics, LSD, and whatever else, and being around their friends and family who have taken part in the medical holistic industry. They hold that stuff inside, and they are also contributing to the pandemic. Even though they're cured, they still hold those microbes, because if you're not expressing, like I expressed all of the rashes under my lymph nodes, okay, I had to deal with that dripping out of, I had to deal with the hives. That's some of the symptoms of AIDS, is the lymph nodes, the rashes, the hives on the body. And luckily I had those lines of defense open, so they were able to release, and so it won't plague me again. And so even though I hold the algorithm of that HIV, it's not going to turn into, it won't come up on an algorithm test, because it's not infection. It's just part of my environment. All viruses are part of your environment. Why they become infection is because they're allowed to take over, and the body isn't strong enough to defend itself against it, because it doesn't have enough substance, and or it's cured, and also the person is out there all the time, and it does get exhausting releasing. But at some point you make your movements relative to what you can handle at the time, at the state of what you are in. And so, I didn't go out without a mask in Walmart. I did have that very tight government issue mask. It was on my face when I went to Walmart, but when I was on the lake with my husband around, one person that was extra outside of my usual influence. And then I was on the lake around people. I just felt the heat. That was it. It wasn't any kind of infection. I mean, it was just the heat, mucus buildup. I cough it out, blow it out, whatever, poop it out. And that was it. Now, when I do test myself to go into some gathering with a lot of different people, then we'll see how exactly my immune system is going to react. It'll probably build up a lot of mucus. And I'll have to keep blowing my nose and keep releasing. But I know for a fact, many of my people in the Jilly Juice crowd have not expressed every single virus that they were ever exposed to that has been a diagnosable disease. I know for a fact. Because you can see it when people post on Facebook. You know they're not telling people in their world this information. They're saying, no, use Jilly Juice as a cure. I know people are using Jilly Juice as a cure. I know it. Can I do anything about it? No, but I will point it out. Because you got to realize that when someone accuses you or when someone blames someone else, they hold all of that. They're the ones that contributed to the most. That's the nature of defending and attacking, is that you have a war inside. When you're defending someone else, and it's always somebody else. When you're defending someone else or you're attacking someone else, they're both two sides of the same coin. When you actually talk about yourself and what you have contributed to the world, whether it's defense or attack or both, and that maybe you got certain things wrong and that maybe you shouldn't have really blamed this industry or that industry or blamed one person. When you own up to your part in this, you might see a little evolution, but I don't see people in a lot of the J-Juice world out there in their own little homogenized zones with all their little followers. I don't see them owning up to jack shit. They will never take responsibility for themselves. They'll never take responsibility for their part in this world. They'll never see the errors of their ways. And that's why I'm saying someone can be so nice and so loving and so sweet to your face and even on Facebook, that when you trigger them, because I've seen it, I've seen a really nice person, you're like, oh my God, they're so lovely, so this, and you're entranced, you're hypnotized by their love, 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 and all that. And then as soon as you say, okay, that's enough love, that's too much, or whatever, then you see the evil come out. You see the mean side come out. And that's what you have to understand. And that's why you say, you don't get fooled by the fronts out there. Because someone's so hateful, which I've seen that, probably can be extremely lovey and dovey, on the other side of it. But why are they practicing such extreme behaviors, whether it's public or private? Because they are at war with themselves. Do you see what I'm saying? What is an even-keeled person who isn't expressing the love, 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 or the hate, 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 or blaming, or attacking, or defending, or whatever? They have found a way to display information that is more egalitarian and neutral and informational and coming from a more of a conceptual basis. And it's a way in which you understand all sides of a story without coming off biased. That's the thing, is the biases. And so I know when someone hasn't really figured it out is that they're only showing one side of themselves, or it's the love, 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 or the hate, 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 or the politics and religion and science dogmas they exhibit as far as posting information is still, and I understand, because people still have to release some of that, but it still shows biases that they hold within. And it's a transition, I get it. And some of you are transitioning out of that, and it's difficult, believe me. It's taken me up to this point to figure out how not to come off so extreme. But when you're angry and you're trying to express, and you know that there's two sides to it all, and certain industries, well, that certain therapeutics have been more prominent than not, and they are being promoted out there all over the place. But that's only just one out of 1 trillion of the factors that made up this pandemic. That's just 1 trillion of the factors. 1 trillionth of the factors. Then you got to look at all the transplant, stuff, all the the immunosuppression stuff, all the like the diabetic medications, all the painkillers, all the different, vasodilators and vasoconstrictors, and the supplements market, and then the remedies market, and the detoxes, and the recipes for aggressive detoxes. Then you're like, dude, it's not just the V market. It's not even just the pharmaceuticals market. It's also the holistic market. It's also the psychedelics and the cannabis market. And then you really can't be so biased against and be discriminatory against this one market. And then if you're partaking in the cannabis and the psychedelics and going to all these different retreats, doing drum circles and playing with your hormones with all the drugs, then how do you have any room to go after the V industry when you have not owned up to that part of you contributing to the neurological attacks on people's bodies? Because the body builds a defense against ayahuasca. The body builds a defense against fucking cannabis. The body builds a defense against LSD. So how can you even remotely think that it's just the V industry contributing to this when you yourself have also contributed to this and also put it out there alpha-numerically through your free speech? I didn't want to call them hypocrites, but I want you to understand the behaviors of people. And I want you to understand what they write, what they say will tell you everything about what they're doing. So when they accuse you of being a cannabis smoker, they're a cannabis smoker. When they accuse you of promoting a therapy that holds specific diseases, they hold the disease inside of them and they have contributed to that. They haven't fully reconciled everything in their system because they haven't fully owned up to their part in this. And that's the other layer of evolution on the JJ meta mentality that is going to get lost on 99.99% of my participants. I can count on my hand how many people actually understand this shit. Because people don't want to change their lifestyle. They don't want to change their belief system. They love the fact that, yes, JJs can be used as a cure temporarily, but they're contributing to the pandemic because they haven't reconciled the stuff inside. Because you can see it on their Facebook. Let me tell you, when you get different awakenings intellectually where you're able to articulate it, then you realize that your friends and your family or the people that you have hung out with so much, you realize how snowed they are and how much you've contributed to their demise. Thanks, Audrey. And so that's why I've pulled out of everything. Because I had to really look at things from a very neutral point of view. I had to get rid of all the influences. That's why I work alone for the most part. That's why I don't call people anymore. I mean, I'll back and forth on private messenger because of a testimony, which is fine. When someone sends me a private message on Instagram, I'm trying to find a way to fucking block them, but I end up calling them and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I don't even know Instagram. But then I end up just unfollowing them and I unblock them because I'm not trying to block them, but they're crossing boundaries. Because people will find a way to infiltrate and get past your defenses. Whether through the phone, through private messenger, through talking to you and imposing their viewpoints. And you're just like, holy shit. And so you have to build a defense around everything. And then you have to release some of those influences because they can be very influential. Even when you don't know how influential they are trying to commandeer your belief system, your culture, take over in very insidious ways. And it's hard to realize it because they're all about love, 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 or hate, 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 or whatever. And so then you really have to have your radar up to see through the emotions and the hypnotic ways of communication to draw you into tractor beaming into their world so they can then go and mutate you and mold you into whatever they want out of you. Okay? And so I know for a fact many of the JJ's crowd, even people who are following me, will not get this. Because their social capital and their influences are so extraordinarily strong that they'll get aspects of this, but they will not own up to their part in this pandemic. They will not own up to their part in why their kids and themselves and people around them have cancer, disease, and chronic illness. They won't admit that they have contributed to the demise of the people around them. Not just because that they're releasing the mucus and all that stuff, and they have stuff that they have to reconcile with, and it's being released out there, but they haven't given this information really to their friends and family. They haven't given them any kind of different thought process. Oh, but I do it privately. Okay, so what? Are you going to be their fucking healer? Are you going to take it upon yourself to be the director of their healing process? So that when they need to go to you, when they need to figure out something, they go to you and you have all the answers? That's what I've also created too with when I had moderators or people that were next to me. I created little monsters. They were out trying to go and cure everybody with the J juice. And that was partly my fault. I know that I own up to that. And that's why they don't get this. That's why they weren't evolving with me, because they were too cured. And they had too many influences around them that wouldn't let them really be autonomous, because they can't be. And so if you're not fully feeling every single virus and the AIDS virus within your body, that's probably going to have to come out at some point, because it's already circulating, it's resurging. Then you're contributing to it. If you're not actually reconciling with everything you've ever had, and you're feeling the algorithm, feeling the energy, whether it's with the hives and the lymph nodes leaking and the rashes and the skin issues and whatever else that you probably have that you know from your family medical history, or what you don't know that may come up because of, you know, that you've been exposed to it because it's been around since 1981, or it's been around ever since between 1981 and now. If you're not feeling anything in this environment, then you are part of the pandemic. You are contributing to the pandemic. And when you finally do release that stuff, you will also be communicable, which means you stay home. When you're doing the J juice or the JJ meta mentality, and you're releasing stuff, maybe you're not doing so much J juice, but now you're finally off of it and you're releasing stuff, you stay home. Because when you're out there, you're contributing to the pandemic. But oh my God, but see, that's what I'm saying, is that you have to figure out how you own your part in this. And when people don't deal with their predispositions, they are the pandemic. They are the chaos out there. They have contributed to the demise of the people around them. That's what you have to understand. But those who've done the J juice will tell me, oh, thank you for curing this, Jillian. I don't have this anymore. I know that they're cured. I know they still use J juice. When they feel something, they'll use J juice. And we'll see how long that's going to last. Remember, you can't be cured in a dynamic environment, because you're going to have to deal with those predispositions that you put at bay, whether the J juice or something else. You're going to have to deal with it. And if you don't deal with it, then you'll justify ascending or going off to another galaxy, to Andromeda or whatever, or off to heaven or Nirvana or wherever else people say that their afterlife is. Okay, fine. Go and disperse with the universe. But don't play whatever game you want. But I want you to know, and I know what's going on out there. And so I've had to own up to my part in a lot of this shit, this cesspool of shit. But we've been heavily programmed. We've been given the enemy. We've been given the savior. We've been given Jesus and Satan. We've been given the love. We've been given the hormones to work from, and then create the archetypes. And then people live those caricatures until they don't exist anymore. And so maybe now it's time that you realize that you don't have to take on what someone has given you, that you develop your own. But how does that mean? That biochemical change. And so, yeah, so realizing that the drug industry and the illicit or legalized, and the holistic remedies and the oncology and all the different therapies have all contributed to this pandemic. And all the new and emerging viruses are not really new. It's just the same drugs being used that way back in antiquity. They were using opium way back in antiquity. They were in the Silk Road. I mean, the opium drug trade. Okay? And even the Rosicrucians or the Egyptians way back in antiquity were using all the different drugs, because that's how they were able to control their population and then control the rise and fall of civilizations. Because that's why there's so many different rise and fall civilizations, because the amount of antibiotics against the population. And then the population goes to shit, and then there has to be like a great flood. There has to be some kind of like, reset. Geological, biological, whatever. And we're in it right now. But at least now you know. Will you still own your part in it? Some of you will, some of you won't. Some of you will probably know how you're even going to characterize your part in it, because you're just like, as soon as you go here, then you have to go here, 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 and then all of a sudden you're just like, wow, it means everything that I've ever participated in has contributed to where we are today, and that's a lot to write about. That's a lot to even own up to. Remember, the world is within you, and you are the world. And you better own up to it if you want to see this world change. If not, that's fine. The old world is dying off. If you can't evolve and adapt and own up to anything, then you'll live out whatever life is left in you, and your kids will be left with whatever you leave them as far as knowledge. And you may not give them any knowledge of this, because it's easier to just assimilate and then pass away when the system says pass away, because that's going to happen too. Fine. So we're in a huge spiritual war. And some of you spiritually are very aggressive in your love, in your hate, in your emotions. And I already know that that comes from imbalances. I already know that you haven't figured it out yet. And you won't. Because that's your identity. And people cannot give up their identity. They won't do any kind of changes. They'll do the best they can to stay in this cured state until their body starts declining, and then they do a Hail Mary. But you think the Hail Mary that you do when finally the body says, no, I can't deal with this world anymore, what you're doing to me, you think the Hail Mary is going to help you? If you can't figure out how to change now, you think that when you're dealing with something aggressive and diagnosable, or you're seeing your body fall apart, because yes, you may not get cancer, disease, and chronic illness per se if you're doing so much the J juice, right? But you see your body, that's what things people don't realize, their body will fall apart because they're not evolving. They're so cured that they're not taking on the resources to strengthen their bones and their other types of organs. And so they'll get up really quickly and the bone's going to break. But they don't feel anything. That's why they love the J juice, or they love all their cures and everything. They don't feel anything until they break a bone, until they break an arm or a leg, or until something else happens, or they don't survive a heart attack in the middle of the night. Who knows? Fine. If you want to be oblivious and be a zombie and not feel anything and be all love and hate and emaciated or obese or depressed or full of anxiety, that's not for me to decide. But I recognize what people write in their Facebook. And I know they're cured. And most likely they won't own up to their part in this. They'll pretend that it doesn't exist, or they'll blame somebody else. I got your number. Bye.